Reimagining Success, episode 282. So I've just come off the phone, as it were, with Brian Walch, a fellow entrepreneur who's been working for himself for 2 years. He left a successful career in IT to become what he now calls a management coach, so an executive coach focusing specifically on managers. He's based out of Anchorage in Alaska and joined us to talk about his career journey, the transition from that IT management role into working for himself, the importance of having a financial runway and support from people around you who know and understand what you're going through, but also how, despite all the challenges and difficulties that come with working for yourself, it is so incredibly rewarding and fulfilling, and it's allowed him to, and will allow him to, continue working beyond what you might call the traditional retirement age. So enjoy the episode, and I look forward to your insights. Welcome to Reimagining Success, your compass for navigating a world where the traditional 9 to 5 no longer fits our needs or aspirations. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg, former corporate insider turned business mentor, executive coach, and mum of 2, here to guide you as you craft a career and a life that's filled with freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. Join me as I uncover actionable strategies, share inspirational stories, and equip you with the tools to thrive in today's evolving workplace. Ready to redefine success? Let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another interview. And this time I'm here with Brian Walch, who's very kindly calling in early in the morning for him over in Anchorage in Alaska. So Brian, welcome to the Reimagining Success podcast. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing before and perhaps what you're doing differently now.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, I'm excited to be here with you this morning. I am a executive coach, or a management coach is what I say. So I help organizations develop their managers and build a management culture. I have been doing this for about 2 years now. So I started doing something a little bit different, kind of worked my way through what do I want to do, and ended up in executive coaching space. Before this, I spent 25 years in an IT consulting firm. I started out as a software developer. The firm was about 25 employees, and we grew over the 25 years. We grew to over 200 employees, 7 offices. I did almost like every component of that business. And yeah, like 2 years ago, I decided it was time to make a change.
Well, tell me more about that. What was it that triggered you? What was it that gave you that nudge to make a change 2 years ago?
It was several things. One, I had always wanted, I was kind of like business minded. I would thought like I would have my own business, but the lure of corporate and kind of stability was strong, and it was also important. I raised 4 kids, and so having that stability was really important. Our company had gone through some changes, and we were kind of changing out some of our senior management, and it was a chance for me to do something different. And I thought, well, if I'm going to reinvest in building up a new part of my career doing this, maybe this is a time to look at doing something different. But the other thing that was really like probably the stronger thing was I had noticed in the last several years that I'd really changed from really enjoying work to thinking about how could I save as much as I could so that I could stop working earlier. And in my mind, I enjoy work. Like I enjoy doing things, producing things, getting things done. I enjoy the interactions. And I'd always had in my mind, like, I don't really want to retire. I want to have like the flexibility and control to work when I want and how I want, and what I want to do. But I don't really want to retire. And like over the last 3 to 5 years of my career, that's all I've been focused on was like, how can I save enough? When am I going to be able to retire? And I was like, that's not really my ethos. That's not what I want. And that was probably a bigger driving factor. And I got to make a change now if I'm gonna build the life I want when I'm 60 and 70.
That's so interesting. And I share that ethos too. And I think that is a bit of a red flag, I suppose. I always see people, and in fact, funnily enough, if you're on Facebook, which I rarely am anymore, I must say, but I get those memories from 15 years ago. And it's almost always every Friday, it's TGIF. And then every Monday, it's, oh no, it's another terrible Monday. And we're counting the hours until the end of the day, counting the days till the weekend, counting, the weeks until the next holiday. And I suppose in sort of an even grander scheme, that's what some people end up doing. You're counting the months, years until you can stop working altogether. And that's a shame because, yeah, as I said, I share your ethos that really I want work to be enjoyable. I want to make a difference. And I don't think I can or want to retire bang on the dot when I'm 65, as people used to do. So that's a really interesting reflection. I'm sure some people might recognize themselves in that moment of, oh, I don't enjoy this as much as I used to.
Yeah. And I'm getting old enough where some of my friends went into retirement, and I saw several of them retire and they were bored. They weren't happy, and I thought, okay, this is not, you can't just work to that point and then figure it out. You have to be thinking ahead and figuring out like, what is retirement and that part of your life look like, and what do you want it to look like?
And what do you want it to look like? What does, we talk about sort of what success looks like, and you've been successful in your IT career. So what does success look like for you now in this next stage of your career?
There's a couple things. One, it's partly why we do some of this on our own, is the lifestyle, the flexibility. And so part of it's that flexibility that I think everybody wants, being able to work when you want and do that. And from a financial perspective, like you can work a bunch in a compressed time, or you can work a little less over a longer period. And so there's that kind of flexibility. But I think the other thing is work gives you like the social construct. You build a lot of friendships and social connections. And so for me, I want to also have that in my solo work. Part of it's like connections like this, like we meet over, Upreneur community or other communities that you're part of, but also like the work I do is kind of a personal type of work. When you're coaching somebody, you're developing a relationship with them, and I want to build a network of people that I, have helped and have helped me, and like we continue those relationships long beyond when we've just done our work. And so that's my vision of like, what do I want work to look like? There's also a social component of it that you carry on long into your quote unquote retirement years.
And that's so important as well. And I think a lot of people who leave the team environment in a big sort of bustling office, although that can be distracting, we miss that when we are working for ourselves. And I always say, because you're a solopreneur doesn't mean you have to be completely solo. And again, like this is one of my favorite things is, of course, having these podcast conversations, communities, and having the social element. And I mean, I'm going in to do some workshops tomorrow in offices, and I'm meeting the teams and we're interacting and so on. So those relationships are so important to nurture. And I think that support network as well of people, as you mentioned, the communities of people who are doing similar things, maybe going through similar challenges, and also cheering you on and so on is so important. So how have you found it navigating that transition from the organizational context and something I imagine you knew how to do with your eyes closed into this new world? How have you become confident and, believed in your abilities to make this work for yourself?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's definitely a journey. It was, I think it's been surprising how drastic the changes from a corporate environment to a solo environment. Like not everybody, it's not like you think when you leave a regular job and you go start on your own, you're going to be able to maintain all those relationships that you had. It'll just be a little different. And it's not, you don't. Those relationships, they've changed just by nature of you changing your relationship to the organization. So that was kind of a surprise of how quickly that changed in terms of leaving your old corporate professional network. And then I've really enjoyed, but it's been slower now, building new relationships with people. And so when you build, invest and you kind of grow these, you just have to be patient. I guess that's the kind of the when I say it's a journey, it's like, I have this vision of like, oh, as I move into this solo life, it's going to have all these people that are friends and also clients. And I think it's just something you be patient with. And over time, you start looking around and realizing like, oh, I really have a history now with this person, and we can refer to these things. And it's not just by nature of our work relationship. And, that has changed with me being an employee of a company versus me being the business. I don't know if that makes sense, but it is a different thing when they say I'm an employee of a company versus it's me. I'm the business.
Yeah, I mean, then it's different on so many levels. I think, I was in marketing and I had a sales team, an HR team, and a product supply, all this structure around you, not to mention the budget and all sorts, right? And mentors and bosses. And of course, there are negative aspects of that. But again, you couldn't miss that structure when you leave. I think patience is a really key word, though, right? Because I think we can, and that moment when I left my job, it's now, it's almost 11 years ago now. And it's a big moment. And I sort of thought, wow, I'm going to now live my best and most fulfilled life just like that. And of course, I have had an amazing time, but it's certainly been a roller coaster. And then as you pivot and change along the way, as you'll find over the next, decade or so, then again, you sort of almost start as a beginner again. So it's definitely, there are ups and downs, and having, as you say, those sort of strong relationships there, I think is really important. And you mentioned that you're an executive coach, or you called it management coach. I'd love to hear about that distinction. And, what is the structure of the kind of work that you're doing? What is your business model now?
Yeah, executive coach is kind of the term. I mean, I'm a certified executive coach. I've got my credentials from the International Coaching Federation, and so my title would be executive coach. But I describe myself as a management coach because I really focus on helping managers develop. Managers have this outsized impact in both how people feel about work and their company, but also how they feel about the work and their enjoyment in work. And so that's really kind of where I want to make my mark, is helping managers as they transition into management and grow in management. And eventually some of them will move into executive, and then they can influence how management's done at their company. So that's why I call myself a management coach. And it kind of works. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching and then also group coaching. And so I've got a methodology that kind of helps people move from leading yourself and self-leadership, because, you probably experienced in the corporate career, a lot of people move into management and out of an individual contributor role. And as I've gone through that individual contributor role, they have people telling them kind of, here's how the steps to take, here's how you progress, here's who are the people that can help you. And then as you move into management, that becomes a lot less defined. Results and success looks a lot different. Sometimes that's pretty ambiguous. Your peers have kind of, moved on. Your mentors have maybe moved on. And so it's figuring out, how do I lead myself into this management career and be really successful at it and help others. And then as you build that, then how do I lead my team and help them be successful and enjoy their work?
Mm-hmm. And such an important level of organization. I think everybody now agrees managers really is where we should be focusing our attention. So I think there's obviously a huge opportunity there. And I look at it through the eyes of hybrid as well, that there's this new challenge of managing people perhaps virtually and in different locations and so on, which I think adds some complexity. Is that something that you're finding in the organization? And also, what organizations do you work with? Are you working still in the IT area, or have you broadened a little bit now that you're doing your coaching and working with companies independently?
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, I definitely agree. Management is kind of getting a little bit of a resurgence. Middle managers were these kind of maligned Dilbert type caricatures of, people that are kind of bumbling around. And there's a lot of research and studies coming out by some really leading institutions showing just the value of managers, these middle managers, and how they're really the glue that can help organizations be more resilient, how they can help them navigate change. And like you said, with the hybrid work, it's everybody's got their own personal thing that they want to do or how they want to approach work. And managers are really the kind of the middle ground that helps tie that between the company's mission and personal desires. In regards to my work, because I've got a pretty strong technical background and I've worked a lot in IT, I work well with people that are moving into technical management. That was my career, and so I'm familiar with that. And so I work with some people like that, but then also just so in terms of industries, Alaska is a really unique place. We've got a lot of industry here, a lot of kind of big initiatives, a lot of oil and gas, tourism, transportation. And so I don't really focus on a specific industry. So I'm working in some transportation, I'm working in research, and then like kind of more service-based or industries. And so I don't. So it spans the gamut. So like my target is the kind of the middle management layer, but definitely because of my background, I have an affinity for people that are in the kind of the technical space, either doing product development or consulting.
Yeah, and there are different ways of niching, of course. So if you're working rather in your location of Alaska, that makes sense. Are you doing more in-person work in that case, or are you still also working virtually?
It's both. So if they're here in Alaska, it's great to be able to meet face to face. And a lot of times we'll do, a couple face to face meetings, or I'll go in and meet with the team, and then we'll continue virtually. But then I have some clients that we've never met in person. They're all virtual just by their location. So I don't necessarily constrain myself to Alaska, but I got a good network here. So.
And in terms of sort of promoting yourself, that's a challenge that we all face. And again, I came from marketing, but marketing yourself, as it turns out, is quite different to marketing this sort of beautiful bottle of perfume over there. So how have you found that? And how do you get your name and your face out there? How do you build your personal brand?
It's been the most, I guess, surprising, difficult thing. I did a little bit of marketing, and I was always amazed at this interplay between product development and marketing. Like product makes something, and then marketing says, "Oh, how are we gonna market that?" And then marketing kind of says, "Well, now we need it to be this," and this little bit of a stair-stepping thing. And it hasn't been that much different in my personal development. I've found that, growing my personal brand, I found that like I'll say like, "This is what I think I want to do," and I'll do a little work, and then I'll say, "Well, how do I talk about that?" And then I'll say, "Well, that doesn't really make sense when I talk about it. I guess I got to do a little bit of this." And so I've felt that kind of stair step in developing my personal brand. So the number one thing is being able to be clear. Like when I tell you, "Hey, I help managers and work with organizations to build their management culture," that took a little bit of work, but I know 100% that's what I want to do. Like that's where I want to make my impact. I feel like, if managers enjoy their work, their employees enjoy their work, they go home and they're happier people with their families and with their friends, and they can give more to their community. Like I just feel like that's where I can, make an impact. So working to develop that, like something that feels good and authentic to myself, and then being able to tell people about it, has been really beneficial. And then, again, because Alaska is kind of unique, I've had some opportunities. So I write an article for our local business magazine. I do a weekly email for people. It's just like some tips on management and how to be a good manager. And then I'm trying to do podcasts and things like this where I can talk about what I do and kind of further refine that message and then look for referrals. So it's kind of a multi-pronged and constant effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're so right, of course, that it starts with knowing who you are, what your value proposition is, what you bring. Because I think without that, we can do all these things, podcast interviews and social media, but it becomes a confused mess. And I think if we don't own and believe in what we offer, then how is any other client going to do it? And that can take some time. And it did sound like you, as you said, you took some time to sort of find out exactly where you wanted to focus. And it may well evolve in the future, but for now, it sounds like you've got a clear and confident elevator pitch, as it were, and you're sort of systematically going about getting your name out there, which is great.
Yeah, it seems like it should be this easy thing. right? Like I thought this should be pretty simple. Yeah, I'll define what I'm going to do, and then I'll go out and I'll tell people. And I would say, yeah, it's a process, and it's probably taken me a year and a half to 2 years to even get to this point. I feel good about it, but I know there's always work to do.
And I think that's both reassuring and scary to people who are listening, who are maybe further back, because it takes a lot of time, but you will get there. And to be honest, it never ends, right? Especially again, because things evolve. I've recently done a bit of a pivot, in particular on the corporate side of my work, my B2B. And of course, then once again, you're questioning a bit, like you said, am I an executive coach, am I a trainer, a business coach, a manager coach? It's all these labels and things that are quite tricky to get right. And I think we resist sort of putting ourselves in that box, don't we? Because of course we're beautiful, multifaceted people, and to sort of force ourselves into this tiny little sentence is very tricky. But then of course there are so many other nuances to it, so it's not that's who we are, but I think it's definitely a good place to start. And of course we can change it, so it's not something to get too worried about, right? To just put it out there. Digital, you can it's not that you've printed lots of brochures that you then have to pay lots of money to redo. It's very easy to change your LinkedIn profile or your Instagram bio or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, when I started, I kind of started even with a different brand, different website, and it was a little bit more like, it was kind of like my personal journey, like I was like, how do you bring your whole self to everything you do? And I changed. I was like, no, this is really where I want to focus. I shifted my focus, and I really want to focus on managers. But you're exactly right. You can change, and you do go through changes. And I think initially I was like, I got to build all this, and then I'm going to go to market. I've realized, like, no, just kind of build it as you go, because the market's going to give you information. You're going to learn about yourself. And so I wouldn't say I'm like, it's not uncomfortable sometimes. It definitely is, but I am more comfortable with things can change. Like you said, you can change your LinkedIn bio, and people aren't as, you see yourself way more critically than other people see you, and so like if you've gotten more clear, people don't remember like what I was doing before. They're like, oh, I get it. You're helping managers. So they're very receptive the more clear you get, and the more defined you get.
Well, that was huge, and it's a little bit conflicting, I find, but it's interesting because, as you said, nobody cares about us, sadly, as much as we do. So I can obsess about every post I'm putting out and so on, but most people might see it, on the bus, on the toilet. For a second, it'll just flimmer by, forget all about it, and they won't say, oh, Anna, didn't you say a few weeks ago that you were focusing on this aspect of management, and now you're, very few people are going to notice, perhaps your mother or your best friend or someone. So I think that's, again, disappointing, but also reassuring. It means you can sort of experiment and evolve as you go, and I think that's really important. I think we also come out of, I don't know about you, but the coach training in particular, we're all such evangelists for coaching, because probably we've experienced ourselves, it's so amazing, and in theory coaching, we can coach anybody, which then makes it really difficult. And I, like you, went through that personal journey too, and I see people and I see my clients do it, and they come out of the coach qualification and they basically put out posts saying how wonderful coaching is, and I can coach you on everything and the goals and all this very general empowering things, but in no way do they stand out versus other people, and it's all very sort of coachy language. It doesn't really, so it's a natural journey for a lot of us to go on. Also, it's very internal focused, and that's what's happened, right? We've transitioned probably for personal reasons, a little bit like you said with management. It's self-leadership and self-awareness and starting there, but then there's a point at which we have to turn outwards and look at what's commercially viable, and that's when we find, as you have, a sort of a viable niche and audience that really has a problem that you can solve with your offering, rather than just, hey, I can help you fulfill any goal in your life to become anything you want to be, which some coaches do succeed with, but I think most of us are not going to see such focused success for that particular message.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of the gift of like starting your own, business, or going out on your own, is you do have to go through that personal journey. And then at some point you got to realize, like, but this is a business, and now I got to get to work.
Exactly that. And, you mentioned right at the beginning this idea of the lifestyle business. And I'm never quite sure about that term, but I think it does capture something really important. So I'm curious, what have you done to create that lifestyle around the business? And what does what I call work-life integration or work-life balance look like for you these days?
Yeah, I'm with you. I like the work-life integration more than work-life balance, and it becomes even more true in when you're a solopreneur. Um, I guess there's two levels. I kind of talked about it. One is like the lifespan of your working life. That to me is a big part of work-life integration. Is how do you keep working and doing things longer term that you enjoy. If you're thinking about, like for me in the day to day, I've raised four kids. They're gone out of the house. So now I'm kind of we're empty nesters. And so what I try to do is, one, look at like what are the important things to me. Like my health is important, and so making sure that I protect some time for my health, like going to the gym and working out and just having a good time. And then I don't know if this is exactly what you were asking, but one of the things we do is my wife and I both have a Monday night is a working night here, and so we just we have a quick dinner, pretty light dinner, and then we just sit and spend like 2 or 3 hours on Monday night working, and that's totally an uninterrupted time. Usually I kind of get my week set up and kind of content calendar, working calendar and all that. And so I just have more responsibility for how do I structure my life to make it successful. Like that's a really important kind of planning, getting all the email lists down and getting kind of everything organized. And then the day is pretty, like I'm pretty much open to schedule client times with clients. Mm-hmm. And, and be really like responsive to clients when I do that. So did that answer your question? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always interesting to hear the different, routines of people. And I've gone through phases of, being completely flexible and sort of working anywhere and anytime and so on. And then I met my partner and he was in a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So I sort of fell back into that routine. When I had a newborn baby, I was sort of working in the evenings because that was the only time I knew my partner would be home from work. And then now I'm sort of back to Monday to Friday because the kids are at school. I've got younger children, so they're still here for many years to come. So it's interesting to hear, how you, and I think the key that you mentioned is being intentionally build that structure. I think structure is what gives you the freedom and flexibility that you want. And if you want to work a Monday evening, and you agree that with your partner, or a Sunday morning for that matter, if that works for you and your family, then that's great. And then some people take, I've got Wednesdays with my son at home still at the moment, or, sometimes I'm on holiday and I'll do a little bit of work and sometimes not at all. And I think that's what's so important. It's finding the right balance for you. And as you said, protecting what's really important, protecting your priorities, but also your family and your life priorities as well, your health and relationships and all those really important people and things in your life.
Yeah. I came out at, 9 to 5. And so I was pretty comfortable or indoctrinated to that. One of the things I found is, partly I've had to remind myself, like, you did this, so you have more control over your schedule. And so I've kind of taken Fridays to be like, or given myself permission to Fridays not be as productive. Like, so if I don't have, I'll schedule client calls that day, but if I don't have client calls, I'll just block the day out and, maybe do some work, but also maybe do some house projects or do something. So if I have that time, I'll take that time rather than, look at my to-do list and go, okay, what else can I get done today? So trying to like almost force a little bit of more, flexibility into my, into my rigidity. And then the other thing is, sometimes people, and this is just me personally, but sometimes people, I think, get into this type of solopreneur so they can work from anywhere. And I just have found that, like, if I go someplace where I know I'm going to be set and have kind of a routine, I can work there. And we've done that. We've done some like trips, like we'll go visit our daughter in college and I'll be there for 5 days and I'll know like 3 of the days I have, 5 to 6 hours where we're just going to be sitting in that Airbnb and I'll be able to work. But if it's a true vacation, then I don't plan to work because it just kind of, you don't do either well. You don't do the vacation well and you don't do the work well if it's too dynamic. So that's the other thing I've kind of structured, I guess.
Yeah, that's huge, because I think integration can easily become sort of blurred boundaries. And as you said, then you're neither present with your family nor working, and you're not really getting anything done, are you? So those, in an ironic way, sort of the boundaries are what make the integration work. So we've had some really interesting insights, but is there any particular advice you'd give to someone? You're still quite fresh in this process, a couple of years in, so maybe someone who's, in the first year or so, what advice might you give somebody or yourself maybe a year or two back with the wisdom that you have now?
Yeah, I think there's two things. One is, I have the luxury of my wife has a full-time job. So at least here in the US, I don't know about in the UK, but in the US, you have to have health insurance. And we had enough financial reserves that I could do this without, pressure on our financial pressures on our relationship if I didn't make money right out of the gate. And so having a little bit of runway. So I think number one is, my expression is you got to be able to make the runway. So if you're flying and you lose an engine, you want to be able to make the runway. That was kind of one thing, is like, make sure you can at least make the runway. It might not be pretty, but you're not going to tank a relationship, tank your health because you do something. Like, make sure you have the right priorities. And then the second is, like, it's harder than you think, but it's worth it. Like, some of the things I look back on, I'm like, well, if I had known this, I don't know if I would have done it, but I'm really happy I didn't know it, so that I did try it, that I did get through the kind of some of the hard times. Like you said, you kind of start doing something and it becomes harder than you think. I didn't know it would be as hard to get clients or to figure out what be able to say what it is I do. That took a lot more work than I thought it would. And I think if I had known all that at the beginning, I would have second guessed whether I really wanted to do it. But the hard work, all that hard work has been worth it. And like, I'm more confident today than I was a year ago that this is the right path. And so I'd say, like, make sure you got the runway made, and then realize it's going to be harder than you think, and still do it.
And embrace it. Yes, feel the fear to do it anyway. I think that financial runway is so important, whether it's a supportive partner or, of course, savings from previous roles and so on, and already perhaps having done some of the work either as a side hustle or at least preparing and having that pipeline, I think, is important. That's a great metaphor and image to actually, if you're going to crash and burn, at least try to make it and survive, and then you can piece it all together again afterwards, can't you? So that's a good reminder, and it is perhaps harder than we think, but I think it's also better. In fact, my brother-in-law said that once about having children. I don't know what you think about that, but he said, it's so much harder than I ever thought, but it's also so much better. And maybe it's the same thing that applies to working for yourself. It's both more fulfilling and freeing and wonderful, and also terrifying and challenging and uncertain and so on. So maybe that's a similar
100%. Yeah. Totally worth it. And and if you knew it all, you probably wouldn't have done it. You're glad you didn't know it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. So maybe we'll end it on that before we reveal any more of the terrible things that come with working for yourself. But Brian, thank you so much for, or kids as well. Yes, great warning to everybody having a business and a baby. Both very challenging, but wonderfully rewarding experiences.
Yeah, right.
So Brian, thank you so much for your time and for your generosity in sharing your experience and your insights. Where can we find you if we'd like to read more about you and the work that you do?
Yeah, thank you. So my business website is shiftfocus.com. So shiftfocus.com. And if you go there, you can learn a little bit more about me. And then at the bottom of the page, there's you can subscribe to my email, which is called Simple Sundays. It's just management ideas on how you can become a great manager. And that's the best way for people to connect with me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brian. Enjoy the rest of your day and week, since you're just starting now on Monday morning. Thank you so much again for your time. And hopefully stay in touch and see where your journey takes you next. Yeah, likewise, Anna. This has been a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. There is so much incredible information out there that's going to help you build and grow your business. However, what is missing from all this is the personalized feedback, support with troubleshooting, and tailored guidance that's really designed to help you in your particular situation with your specific challenges. Introducing the Business Incubator, a mentoring program focused on exactly that: implementation, support, and accountability to help experienced corporate professionals like you grow your expert business faster without sacrificing your personal life to do so. You'll get expert guidance and personal feedback to help you focus on the right things at the right time, comprehensive training materials and frameworks to support you, but above all, you will get weekly structure and accountability to help you identify your priorities, stay focused, and review your progress. And you'll get a supportive community of people who get it, who are going to cheer you on and share their lessons learned. So this is a really unique hybrid program that gives you the intimacy of one-to-one support, the training, frameworks, and structure of a course, and that community element of a group program. You can read more and apply now at onestepoutside.com/grow. That's onestepoutside.com/grow.